Okay, I think I'm live. My first time ever. So, if you are joining me in the comments and watching, please let me know that you're here and your name and maybe where you're watching from. Uh, I would love to chat with you. And if there is, that sounds weird. If there's a question you have about people pleasing and overcoming it, breaking free from it, or anything surrounding that, what is keeping you stuck in your life? Oh, I see there's people in the chat. Please show your name and or say your name, where you're from. I would love to see who's here, but I can't see it unless you chat with me. Um, and I hope I know how to do this and actually see the chat. Let me know if you can hear me, first of all. So I'm just going to talk about, it says there's 5 people. Live chat. Okay. Let me know. Anybody give me a thumbs up in the chat, something to know that you can actually hear me, you can see me, and you can chat with me. Again, this is my first time going live, so I don't necessarily know what I'm doing, but I wanted to do this live in order to connect with you on a more live basis, if you will. I get a lot of comments in my videos that I do, and I don't always, well, there's no way to connect with you directly, right? When you maybe ask me a question, I can respond to it, and I try to respond to all the comments I get, but I would love to respond in real time. So if you have a question or a comment about for a mostly, I call myself a mostly recovered people pleasing, procrastinating perfectionist. If you have a question for me or a comment about that, something you're struggling with in your life, please put it in the chat. Again, I'm not seeing any chats come through. Maybe I should put one in. And there, I just put one in the chat. So I can see that there's 10 people here watching. So send me a message. Maybe I don't have something set up right in the chat, and I would love to know, again, if you can hear me. But I want to talk about, I just have a few notes, just kind of generally start the conversation by talking about what is people pleasing, right? There are I've said recently in the last year or so that people pleasing feels like it's become an epidemic. And I don't know if that's because of the age range that I'm in. And as a midlife woman, I was raised when I was young to be nice, to put other people first, to always think of other people's feelings before my own. And that has led me, and I'm assuming a lot of women my age in midlife, maybe 40 and above, were taught the same way, to be nice, to, again, we're the nurturers, right? And we put other people's feelings before our own, their needs before our own, and we always put ourselves on the back burner. So I don't know if it's become an epidemic because of this age that we are, or if it's just feels like a lot of people are putting other people before themselves. And I have heard from a lot of women that now they're at a stage in their life and they have put other people first for so long that they don't even know who they are anymore. So I want to talk about that today. And again, if you have any questions, if you can hear me, if someone could put in the chat that they can hear me, that would be awesome. I see thumbs up, 2 thumbs up on the live stream, but I would love to know that you can actually hear me. So people pleasing, what is it? It is, again, putting others' opinions, their feelings, their needs, their thoughts, their feelings ahead of your own. It is going along with whatever. I don't care. What do you want to do? Right? Never stepping up and deciding. And a lot of this, the majority of it comes from fear. Yay! You are audible, loud, and clear. Thank you so much for commenting. I really appreciate it. Uh, so, people pleasing is going along with whatever. When someone asks you what you want to do, even as simple as where do you want to go eat? What do you want for dinner? I don't care. What do you want to do? And putting the decision on them. And again, a lot of it leads back to fear that we're going to be judged for our decisions, fear of rejection, of them not liking our decision, or of making a choice and then we go to the restaurant and then someone doesn't like the food, then we feel like we're responsible. They could have spoken up and said, no, that's not where they wanted to go. That wasn't something that they could eat. But a lot of times that's us as the people pleaser, is just putting the decisions on other people and letting them decide. Then we feel like, well, if something goes wrong, it's not our fault, right? And that's it's a really hard way to live, because it always puts it off on other people. And in a future live, I'm going to talk about this Reddit forum that I found that was full of juicy nuggets of people pleasing. And someone wrote in, the original commenter wrote in and said, I I know I'm a people pleaser and I don't see anything wrong with it. And then the flood of comments in response. But one of them was, when we people please and put the onus on everyone else to make our decisions for us, even again as simple as picking a place to go eat, it makes the other person feel responsible for our needs and feelings, and it puts pressure on them. It's a weight on them to always be the one to make the decisions, and that's no fun for the other person. So I'll talk about that more in a future live. What else is people pleasing? Saying or doing things that don't feel like us, right? Going along with things just to go with the flow and not be a burden, not be a problem. That is people pleasing. Not speaking up is people pleasing. And again, all of this, most of it goes back to fear of rejection, fear of judgment, taking the blame, even when we're not to blame. That is people pleasing. Because again, when we cover up for other people and we take the blame for things, that is because we have this fear of not being liked, or not of being judged for who we truly are. People pleasers wear masks, and I'm not pointing the finger. I lived this for 55 years of my life. I was the queen of people pleasing. I was the queen of second chances. I gave people second chances, third chances, fourth chances, fifth chances. And it was always to my detriment. I would think, oh, I'll give this person another chance, right? This is their second chance. They didn't mean it, whatever. It was always to my detriment. There's a saying that when people show you who they are, believe them, right? So me giving second, third, fourth, fifth chances, they weren't going to change. But that's what I hoped for, right? And that's people pleasing. Not setting boundaries is people pleasing. Not saying no, saying yes, when deep down your gut is screaming, no, 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 no. Right? Do you ever do this? Anybody get into this when they're trying to make someone else happy or keep someone else happy or keep someone else from exploding or keeping, from having a conflict, right? Conflict avoidance is a big people pleasing trait. Where does this come from? What is the best way to say, as I'm not able to say it, and it's like a burden for me since my childhood? What is the best way to say what? Could you expand on that a little bit? To say no? Okay, perfect. Um, yes, right? So let me get into this just a bit first. This comes from childhood, just like the commenter said. Yeah, my bad, I missed it. So what's the best way to say no? I have actually a freebie that is in the description of this live video, and it's called 20 Ways to Say No Without Feeling Guilty or Selfish. And you can download that. Again, it's free, and it tells you in different circumstances how you can say no. But the easiest way I have found now to say no is to because maybe if you could tell me what is the situation where it's hardest to say no. A lot of times it's no to an invite, right? Maybe you're invited to happy hour or an event or something where really maybe you don't have other plans already on your calendar, but you just were looking forward or needed to go home and relax, right? And so you have a hard time saying no because you feel like you'll disappoint them or you will hurt their feelings if you say no, or you won't be asked again. Hey, Rob, thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. You won't be asked again if you we're talking about people pleasing. You won't be asked again. And so you say yes out of obligation or, again, fear of rejection or fear of disappointing them. What I have found is easiest now is to just say, thanks for the invite. I can't this time, but I hope you'll invite me again. And again, if the commenter can tell me, NUCAD NAMA, news and entertainment. If you can tell me maybe more a little bit about the situation, I can give you more specifics. But again, you can download that freebie and it will tell you specifically things to say. I'm not going to get into that right at the moment. I so I started to say that most of this people pleasing and perfectionism came from childhood, right? Especially as females, we were taught to be the nurturers, the person to not hurt the other person's feelings. We were taught to be good, to be nice. And so we grew up with these patterns. And when we're young, this is scientifically proven, when we're young, about up until about the age 7 or 8, our programming is forming during that time, right? We're born basically like blank computers. And you think about now, I'm 62. If I have a computer that has software in it that's 62 years old, I'm not going to get the greatest results out of that computer than I would if I upgraded. So everything you experienced when you were young, again, up until about the age 7 or 8, everything you experienced, everything you were told, maybe you were told you weren't good at math or, you got a bad grade on something and you just started telling yourself that I suck at that. I can't do that. I told myself when I was young, because I struggled with comprehension in school and vocabulary, that I was not creative. I told myself I was not creative. And a lot of the creativity that you did in grade school and high school, junior high and high school, was writing, right? Or art. And I told myself this story that I wasn't creative. And so I grew up as an adult because that went in as my programming that I wasn't a creative person. And I grew up as an adult believing that I wasn't creative. And it's only been in the last few years that I actually realized that we all have creativity. I have creativity. I'm creating YouTube videos, right? And I started using my voice, and I started telling myself, reprogramming that old program, that old software that told me, that made me believe that I wasn't creative. Now I'm rewiring that. And you can do that through meditation, hypnosis, just speaking to yourself positively during the day. And I'm going to go into a little bit more of that in a little bit. But we all are programmed to believe things when we're young that if we don't examine them when we get older, then we are just living through those old programs. And if you, again, think about your computer, if you haven't updated your software, like I used to use WordPerfect and some software, I know they're still out there. Hey, Sally. Hi, thanks for saying hi. I appreciate it. Um, so I used to use WordPerfect, and I know it's still out there. Some people in the UK, I believe, use it in accounting, but I am probably not going to get the same output from using WordPerfect that I could from an updated software. And so if you haven't updated the software that's in your subconscious mind that was put there when you were young, and nobody did it for the most part maliciously, right? It's just what you experienced, and that's how our subconscious gets developed, is through the experiences that we have. So if you haven't updated it, you're still going to get the same output that I would get from WordPerfect, which probably is not going to be the output in my life that I want, right? So if the reality of your life isn't what you want it to be, then we need to look at what programs are running, because your subconscious cannot act independently. It can only do what it's programmed to do, just like a computer. So that's what I wanted to say about that. What happens when, let me see, do we have other questions? Rob said, I haven't seen WordPerfect since the 90s, I think. I know, right? But yeah, it's a software that's used. And I heard recently that it's still used. And I think it's in the field of accounting that they still use WordPerfect. Don't ask me why. I don't know. So what happens when we people please? Oh, thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. You connected the bridge very, very well. It's a wonderful presentation, like a storytelling. Much appreciated. And lots of love from India. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I appreciate you being here and commenting. So what happens when we people please for me, for 55 years of your life? What are the outcomes of that? Just some basic ones. Resentment. I had a boatload of resentment that I dealt with on a daily basis because I always thought, I'm being so nice. Why are people taking advantage of me? Why aren't they treating me nice back, right? And I expected them to change based on me being nice. And so I would start being nicer. And that led me to say yes more, right? Instead of saying no when I really needed to say no. Why can't I, why are they not being nice back to me? Why are they not treating me respectfully? And the resentment just kept building up. And that buildup of resentment, when you hold it in, I say that any emotion that we hold in, especially the negative ones, which there really are no negative emotions, they're all just messages to us of what we need to look at. But when we suppress our emotions, especially like resentment, sadness, anger, bitterness, those emotions that are lower on the scale, I say it's like we're constipated. And if you haven't pooped for a few days, it can get painful, right? But not only that, the reason it gets painful is because you're building up toxins inside of your body. And that is exactly what happens when you suppress your emotions. So I suppressed my resentment, my sadness, my bitterness. I got really bitter, angry at people, but I didn't express it. And I don't, I didn't need to express the anger, but I needed to voice what I was feeling. And I wouldn't do that because of the fear of rejection or abandonment or disappointing someone. Disappointing someone was one of my biggest hurdles, people pleasing hurdles to overcome. The fear of disappointing someone was detrimental to me because I thought that I would be abandoned. And again, going back to the subconscious mind, our mind, its main goal is to keep us safe. And I know that most of us don't feel unsafe in a physical way. Um, but I know that is also the case as well. But a lot of times we feel unsafe emotionally. And the ultimate fear is being rejected and abandoned because it goes back to our DNA still has remnants of caveman, cavewoman days. And as a cavewoman back then, if you were abandoned, you may not survive. So it really goes back to, the reptile part of the brain. So safety is the main goal of the subconscious, is to keep us safe, to keep us alive. And where was I going with this? Oh, so I didn't voice my resentment. I didn't voice my bitterness. I didn't voice when someone broke a promise to me or didn't keep a commitment with me. I didn't voice it because I had been programmed to believe that that ultimately wasn't safe to do, that I would be rejected, that I would be abandoned. And so I became constipated with my emotions because I didn't express them. And then the problem with that is when we suppress them for so long, we then get to the point of explosion. And obviously that's not healthy for ourselves or for our relationships, right? Because the other person might say, "Wow, I didn't know you felt that way about this. You never said anything." And then we blame that on them because why didn't they know? Why didn't they figure it out? Right? But it really is our responsibility to express how we feel, what we're thinking, what hurt us. But as people pleasers, we don't feel um what's the word? We don't feel okay. We don't feel safe. We don't trust ourselves to do that. We don't trust the outcome. And I'll talk about this in another live as well. That is really a control mechanism of the people pleaser. And when I discovered that through the help of a therapist, that I was being controlling in my people pleasing behaviors, I was devastated because you think, I'm so nice. I'm the opposite of controlling. Like, there's no way you could say that I'm a controlling person. But in my examination, in me mastering, breaking free of this, I realized how controlling and manipulative I was being in my relationships. Another outcome of people pleasing is perfection, right? This was a big one, is a big one for me. I still struggle with perfectionism sometimes because even like thinking about coming live on here, it's like, oh, what if I make a mistake, right? But so where does that come from? And then, what is my new thought about that now? So perfectionism, I believe, comes from people pleasing because I needed to show up perfectly for everyone in order for me not to be judged or rejected. Then I would put on whatever mask was required to appear perfect. And, I got comments that when I was younger that, "Oh my gosh, you're so confident. You have it all together." But deep down, I knew that that was just a cover up. I was faking it because I didn't want to be judged for my flaws. And what did I say? I was gonna where it came from, and then, oh, how so now I had this realization within the last year that I looked up the word imperfect because I was like, what does it really mean to be imperfect? And I had a huge aha moment, a huge discovery. So the word imperfect in Latin, like in its original definition, means not complete. And when I read that, they didn't say anything about being, because we think of imperfect as being flawed, right? Needing fixed. All the original definition was imperfect is incomplete. And I realized I'm fine with being incomplete, right? Because if I'm complete, that means I'm done. I'm finished. My life is over. That's how I interpret that. And so I'm good with being incomplete now. And when we can when we can embrace our imperfectness, because what is perfect anyway, if you really, like, aside from complete, right? It is like everything is exactly as it should be. Well, according to whose yardstick? Who's measuring that, right? We we as people pleasers give that measurement, we give that yardstick to someone else, and then we try to be perfect to live up to other people's expectations. And that is a losing battle because today it could be, my I don't have one now, but my partner's expectations, right? It could be my best friend's expectations. It could be my mom, who is 94 now, her expectations of me. It could be, if you have a boss, it could be your boss's expectations. It could be whoever's expectations. So you're constantly morphing yourself, right? To live up to whatever yardstick you think someone else is measuring you by. And that's what I say, that I was the biggest chameleon. I would morph myself. I would shapeshift into being whoever I needed to be in order to please that other person. And that is not living my life, right? And it's a huge guessing game. My ex-husband, we were in a disagreement about, because he was constantly changing the rules, and I was constantly trying to live by them. And I said to him toward the end of our relationship, which our marriage was not very long because of this, it was a codependent, narcissistic, magnetic bond. And I'll again talk about that in another live because that's a completely different subject. But I said to him, "I don't know how to make it work with you because you're constantly moving the target." And he said, "Yeah, I know." So that is another thing, and I'll move into that, about being a people pleaser, is we become targets for these manipulative people, and the ones that are doing it on purpose, right? And we become targets for these people because we are constantly bending over backwards to try and make them happy, to try and keep them happy, to try and keep the peace, right? We become the peacekeeper, and it is a losing battle. I will tell you from my experience, it is a losing battle. And to make it clear, I am not a therapist. I am not a counselor. I am speaking from my own experience, from my own, uh, I don't speak French. People pleasing can be exhausting. Yes, it can, Rob. It's actually very, very exhausting. Um, Thank you for subscribing, and I look forward to seeing you more in the comments. NewCAD Nama News and Entertainment. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Yeah, people pleasing is freaking exhausting. It's so exhausting. And it causes dis-ease in the body, which is disease. And uh, I have so much content that I can share because I was hospitalized 4 times in 6 months to repair something that happened in my body that I now believe was my body telling me, "You need to get out of this relationship. It's not good for you." And so the the amount of stress that we cause ourselves from always worrying about, are they happy? What are they thinking? What can I do to make them happy? Right? And morphing ourselves into being someone else. It is not only exhausting, but it is very detrimental to our physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being. It's very unhealthy. It's a very, very unhealthy pattern. And so that is what my mission now is, to help, especially women, because I'm female, right? And we are the nurturers, the caregivers. That's what we were taught to be when we were young, to be nice, to be the good girl. My mission is to help as many women as I can. Oh, it makes me emotional, to overcome this, because what I lived through in my life, I lost my chance. Oh, this will make me emotional, to have my own children because of my people pleasing. And I want to help other women, if they're in the throes of it now, to break free from it, or to break free from it super early and rewire that programming that we were given. Um, it's not a nice gift to be given. Huh, okay. So what else are outcomes of, my name is Harsh. This is my channel name. Great. Thank you. What are some other outcomes from people pleasing? Procrastination. I ended up procrastinating because when I was in the throes of trying to perfect things, it just got so overwhelming that I would say, screw it. I just can't do it. And so I would procrastinate and put things off, until the point of, the stress of where you had to get it done, or you just abandon the project. So procrastination, guilt. I lived in so much guilt from, again, um, not being able to keep a relationship together, hurting a friend's feelings by the occasional time when I would speak my truth. Just, I lived in guilt of uh, yeah, sometimes it felt like I didn't even know who I was. I didn't know who I was supposed to be, and so I thought that I was always being the wrong thing, that I wasn't living my life, and which I wasn't a lot of the times, and so I would feel guilty, about that. And then one of the biggest things that I was taught when I was young was that it was selfish to think of myself first. And so I always thought that when I spoke when I, we accomplish things, right? When we're kids, when we're adults, we accomplish things and we want to be proud of them and we want to celebrate them. But there was always this cloud of, I'm selfish if I do that. I can't, I can't tell someone. I'll make them feel bad if I tell them something that I'm proud of that I accomplished. And so I lived with this burden, this cloud, like I said, of always feeling selfish for thinking of myself first. And then the other people pleasing outcome that I want to talk about is the inability to say no, right? We learn when we're young to not speak up. If you can't, this, I heard this saying so many times, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. And so I would not speak up. And I learned that that was being good and nice by not speaking up. And so then when I would get asked something as an adult, I thought the answer always had to be yes. And so we end up not being able to say no. And again, I have the freebie 20 ways to say no without feeling guilty or selfish. You can download it. The description, the link is in the description. And you can download that and read through it. If you have questions about it, come back and ask me again on another time to be able to, so I can go into that in more depth. So how do we break free? I just want to give you a few tips on how, if this is you, if you see yourself in my story or parts of my story, what did I do to break free? I want to just give you some simple wins that you can start using today. One thing is, this isn't necessarily easy, but it's fairly simple once you get it, once you see it. I went to Codependence Anonymous for 3 years, and it took me over a year to feel like I was starting to make progress, because the first year was spent just learning what I was doing that was causing me all this pain and turmoil and resentment and all of that. I was sitting in a meeting one night and it hit me like a lightning bolt that I was trying to change my behaviors. I was trying to say no more often, but I just would boomerang back to the old behavior and I couldn't figure out why. I couldn't figure out how to change my behaviors and make it stick until one night in a CODA meeting, it hit me. It wasn't about my behaviors. It was about the beliefs that I had about myself. And again, this goes back to the programming. Those beliefs are stored in the subconscious mind. And those beliefs, that programming is what runs 95% of our day. If you are trying to change a habit, you have to go to what belief is driving that habit, whether it's procrastination or overeating or people pleasing or perfectionism. It's not about the habit. It's about what belief is driving that habit. So once I figured that out and started examining the beliefs that I had about myself, that I wasn't worthy of a healthy relationships, that I wasn't worthy to speak up for myself, the belief that I didn't feel good enough, that I wasn't smart enough, that I wasn't, and logically, I knew these things weren't true, but our life is not run by logic. It's run by the subconscious mind. Our logic is only 5%. What you're listening to, what you're doing listening to me right now, you are using your logical brain. That is 5% of your power. The rest is your subconscious and the programming and the beliefs, the emotions, the stories that are stored in the subconscious. And that's what I help people break free from, is that those subconscious beliefs and that programming. I help you rewire the neural pathways the actual synapses that are firing in your brain. So we have to recognize that our people pleasing, I need a drink of water, obviously. Our people pleasing isn't about it, we won't break free from it by trying to change our behaviors. We break free from it by looking at our beliefs and changing what we believe about ourselves. Another thing that I started doing was mastering my self-talk. So when I heard myself say, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, anything that follows the two words I am will follow you. So I am lazy. I am even saying I'm tired. We can make ourselves more exhausted by saying I'm tired. So saying I am a people pleaser or it's just who I am to help other people, that is just wiring in what we don't want to believe about ourselves. So I started really looking at my self-talk. Was I saying things about myself that I truly wanted to believe about myself? Or was I just in my conscious state continuing to program negative stuff into my subconscious? Again, another live or another whole video could be spent just on that, right? But I really started looking at what I was saying to myself, whether it was out loud, stuff like, "Oh my gosh, I'm such a klutz," or, when those kind of things happen, or "I'm going to be late." Well, if I'm telling myself I'm going to be late, I'm going to be late. I'm always late, right? That is programming more of what I don't want in my brain. Um, so mastering self-talk. Pay attention to you thinking it's just the way I am. It's not. Your identity is not set in stone. That's another thing that we grew up believing is that what we believed about our brain was forever true, right? That was just us for the rest of our lives. That is not true. Our brain has neuroplasticity, so it can adapt and develop and learn new things. So the saying, an old dog can't learn new tricks, that is not true. Um, you can learn new things. You can reprogram yourself to be whatever you want to be. Obviously, there are some limitations to that. Like, I can't program myself to have brown eyes when I have blue eyes. Um, But aside from those limitations, you can be who it is you want to be. You are not stuck with thinking, maybe you were told you were shy, or again, you weren't good at math, right? And so you grew up believing those things. That is not set in stone. You can change that. And I have proven it. It is true. It is absolutely a scientific fact that you can rewire your brain. The last thing that I'm going to talk about today is, again, this goes along with mastering the self-talk, but there's a book, You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay, and she has an exercise in here that she says she's given this exercise to hundreds of people and the results are phenomenal. Um Again, this goes back to training the mind. And most of you have heard of affirmations, and maybe you've tried those and they just don't stick. Part of it is you have to do it for long enough. But when we start saying these things, we don't believe them, right? Because the belief is the opposite. But over time, the subconscious starts to hear you and says, because it can't talk in, or your subconscious doesn't understand language. It doesn't understand English or French or German or whatever language you speak. It understands feelings and images. So when we say these things like, I am enough. Not only do I want to say the words, but I want to feel it. And initially, it doesn't come naturally, but you stay with it long enough, and the subconscious is like, oh, she is reprogramming that old pattern, and she now wants to believe that she's good enough. So I'll start supporting her in that. I'm confident. I accomplish what I set out to accomplish, right? I am free. I am relaxed. I am calm, whatever it is in the positive. But in her book, she says this exercise is I approve of myself. So she says, do this. This seems big, right? Do it 300 or 400 times a day, not a week or a month. Do it 300 or 400 times a day. And if you think that that's too many times, she says, when you're worrying about something, you go over your problem at least that many times a day, right? If you're worried about something, maybe I'm not going to have enough money, right? How many times a day do you think about that worry? So start replacing when you see those thoughts come through, let them come through, don't try and stop them, but then replace it, because a person cannot think two thoughts at the same time. So if you recognize a negative thought, replace it immediately as soon as you recognize it with a positive thought. And the positive thought you can say, no matter what the negative thought is, I approve of myself. I approve of myself. I approve of myself. And the more you say that, it will become a habit. And our thoughts, the negative ones, the positive ones, they are just habits, right? How do we start eating better? We replace eating poorly, the habit of eating poorly. Maybe you eat in front of the television, right? And you snack and you eat the whole bag of chips instead of a couple handfuls, right? That is a habit. How do you replace that? You cut up apples and have an apple while you're watching the movie instead, right? That is a healthy habit versus the unhealthy habit. We don't get rid of habits, we just replace them. So replace your negative thoughts with positive thoughts, and eventually that negative thought habit will just become a positive thought habit, and it will be really hard to go back to the old way. So that is what I have for you today. Wow, 47 minutes. I appreciate all of you being here. Harsh for being here. Rob, Sally came in, and I appreciate you commenting and just being here and sharing in my first live with me. I really, really, truly appreciate it. And I plan to go live every Wednesday at 1:11 Central Time in the US. So I hope you'll join me, and I will see you next week.